Hearing drunken laughter float through my kitchen window at 2 a.m. had become normal. What wasn't normal was what came next while I was hunched over my '79 Camaro's carburetor in the garage, trying to blank out another sleepless night. "Mark, he's pathetic," Rebecca's voice carried across the still night. "Honestly, girls, even if he knew I'd been with 5 different men over the last 3 years, he still wouldn't have the nerve to leave me." The socket wrench slipped from my hand and clanged on the concrete. Amber's high laugh followed. "Oh my God, Becky, you're terrible. But you're right, he's like a beaten dog, he just takes whatever you give him. Remember when I told him I was working late all those nights last summer? I was at Roy Mercer's. That man knows how to treat a woman." More laughter. Nora chimed in. "What about that dentist, Dr. Ellis?" "Oh please. Ellis's just for the dental stuff, a quickie in his office after hours. But Roy? That's different. Did you see his charger? We did it on the hood last week while Mark was at his construction job. I stood in the garage, motor oil under my nails, listening to my wife of 15 years lay out her affairs in brutal detail, the woman I'd worked 2 jobs to put through real estate school, the woman I trusted.
Once your vegetables and protein are cooked,"
Rebecca sneered, voice full of contempt, "is Mark really thinks we're happy. He brings me flowers every Friday like some lovesick kid. It's almost pathetic. What if he finds out?" Amber asked. "He won't," Rebecca replied. "And even if he did, what's he going to do? He's got no backbone, no money, I handle everything. Where would he go? Back to his mother's trailer." Cold ran through me. I wiped my hands on a rag and moved to the back door. Through the window I could see them. Rebecca, blonde and immaculate even at this hour, waving a wine glass. Amber, the brunette, hanging on every word. Nora, the supposedly quiet one, now in full gossip mode. "You know the funniest part?" Rebecca said. "Mark actually asked me last month if I was happy. Can you believe it? I told him I'd never been happier and he bought it. That was the moment I decided what I would do. I went back to the workbench and planned. They were right about one thing. I had been weak. They were wrong about everything else. I spent the night in the garage not fixing the car, but thinking. By sunrise I had a plan, not fast, not easy, but meticulous. The next morning I changed the locks. I emptied our joint checking account every last dollar, $47,000, and opened a new account elsewhere. I paid a locksmith double to be at the house at 7 a.m. and had every lock replaced within an hour. When Rebecca trudged downstairs at 9 o'clock, hungover and bleary-eyed, her key didn't work. Her phone buzzed with calls I ignored. I opened the door, handed her a cup of coffee and a folded sheet of paper. "What's this?" she asked. "Your eviction notice," I said quietly. "You have 30 days to find somewhere else. The house is in my name, in case you forgot." She read the paper, confusion melting into anger and then panic in seconds. "Mark, what the hell is this?" she cried. "You're right, Becky. I may be weak, but I'm not stupid." I closed the door and locked it. I watched from inside as she pounded on the porch for 5 minutes, screamed, then sped off in her BMW. My phone exploded with calls. I turned it off. The red lantern was the kind of dive you expect in a small-town dark wood. Dim lights. Regulars who'd been on the same stools for decades. It was also where news spread. "Mark Hayes, as I live and breathe," Hank called when I walked in. Hank was my old buddy, massive, blunt, ran a construction crew, and solved problems with either jokes or muscle. "Heard you finally grew a pair. News travels fast," I said, sitting beside him. "Faster than you think. Becky's been calling everyone, crying you've lost your mind. Says you locked her out." Hank signaled the bartender for 2 beers. "But Mrs. Abbott has another version." Mrs. Abbott, the 70-year-old widow across the street who knew everyone's business before it happened, apparently had some photos on her phone. A red Charger in my driveway when I wasn't home. I showed Hank screenshots from my backup. "Look at this." He studied my phone. "Jesus, Mark. She's been texting someone named R 300 times a month. Calls at 2 to 3 in the morning." I told him I'd cloned Rebecca's phone the night before, backed it up to the cloud before I changed the locks. "Is that legal?" he asked. "It's our family plan," I pay for it. I scrolled to a text thread between Rebecca and Amber dated 2 weeks earlier plotting to cover things up, and a voice memo where Rebecca bragged about her affairs and mocked me mercilessly. Hank went pale reading a voice memo where she admitted being with Roy, Ellis, Tom, and more, and talked about framing me for threats to get everything. We need to know everything about Roy Mercer, I said. Easy, Hank said. Auto body shop at the edge of town. Flips classic cars. Drives a cherry red 68 Charger. Rumor has him owing money to some dangerous folks in Portland. Poker game gone bad. Mrs. Abbott added that other cars had been in my driveway over the past year. Dr. Ellis's Mercedes and Tom Harlan's truck. Tom, a married town councilman with kids. Help me with something tomorrow night, I asked Hank. Something that might get messy. He grinned and said, count me in. The Stillwater Harvest Festival was the town's big October event, Main Street packed with booths selling cider and quilts, live music, a beer garden, and a new big screen for local ads. Rebecca always showed up. Image was everything for her. I watched as she and Amber set up their real estate booth. Nervous glances scanning the crowd. They should have been worried. At 2 p.m., when the festival was full, I went into the control booth where my friend Elliot ran the screen. I pretended to check the Wi-Fi, plugged in my laptop, and within minutes had control of the big screen. I'd prepared a presentation using screenshots and recordings from Rebecca's phone. I waited until Rebecca and Amber were surrounded by customers. Then the ad for Harlan's hardware faded and the big screen showed a text conversation. Rebecca arranging to meet while claiming Mark was working late. The crowd murmured. The next slide was a photograph Mrs. Abbott had taken Roy's red Charger in my driveway and 2 silhouettes in a compromising position on the hood. The murmur became a roar. Rebecca went white. Amber tried to pull her away, but people were already pointing and whispering. The third slide was a transcription of a voice memo where Rebecca admitted sleeping with 5 men and mocked me for believing she was happy. Silence for 3 seconds, then chaos. Janet Harlan marched across the street and hurled a funnel cake into Tom's face, then splashed hot cider. The crowd closed in. Roy tried to leave, but someone recognized his car. He got aggressive, and Hank, who I'd placed nearby, bumped him into the mud wrestling pit the fire department set up. Roy went face first into the mud. The crowd cheered. I walked calmly through the crowd to Rebecca. Hello, Becky. Enjoying the festival? I asked. She spat hatred at me. You did this? You humiliated me in front of everyone. Dr. Ellis tried to slip away, but Mrs. Abbott snapped photos. Amber screamed that I'd made everything up and accused me of threatening Rebecca. I played voice memos proving their conspiracy to lie and frame me. Amber's face drained of color. Roy climbed out of the mud like a drowned rat, cursing. This isn't over, Hayes, he yelled. Oh, Roy, I said, smiling for the first time in weeks. It hasn't even started. After the festival, the construction site, the half-built office complex on the edge of town where I'd been working part-time, provided the setting for the next act. I got a text from an unknown number. You think you're smart, asshole? Meet me at the site. Time to settle this like men. I showed it to Hank. He wasn't surprised. We'd prepared. The site had a foundation pit about 8 feet deep, 2 feet of muddy water at the bottom, and a portable toilet Hank had positioned and hooked to his crane. Roy arrived in his Charger, tried to look tough, and laughed at me for being humiliated. I suggested he leave town quietly or I'd expose his shady insurance claims. He lunged. I sidestepped and used his momentum. He stumbled, and with a little pushing and a well-timed crane hook from Hank, Roy ended up in a portable toilet that dropped into the pit. He climbed out 20 minutes later, soaked and filthy, and drove away without a word. I tossed him a rope and told him to get out and disappear. He did. Later at the Red Lantern, the bar was packed with people hungry for the festival's aftermath. I sat nursing a beer, telling the story while Officer Perez, who should have pressed harder, chuckled and warned about not letting anyone get hurt. I'd been enjoying the first real smiles I'd had in months when the door opened. Rebecca, Amber, and Tom walked in. Rebecca was furious, aiming to make a scene. We need to talk now, she demanded. We're talking, I said. She accused me of losing my mind and of harassment. I produced the deed, the bank records, the call logs, the voice memos. Amber tried to say I'd been making threatening calls. I handed my phone over with a record of every outgoing call. I told Officer Perez I had recordings of their plot to frame me criminal conspiracy. Perez shifted uncomfortably, but he agreed that false reports would be a crime. Tom pleaded for a civilized solution. I told him bluntly that he'd ruined his family by cheating and that I'd made sure everyone knew. Rebecca begged for counseling. I offered divorce papers, no fault 50-50, accompanied by documentation of every expense she incurred in her affairs. She could sign and take her half of what was legitimately ours, or fight me and have every text, photo, and voice memo exposed in court. Tears flowed as she realized she'd misjudged me. "You were right," she'd said once, that I wouldn't leave her. I nodded. "You were right. I wouldn't leave you. I just wouldn't let you stay." I pulled out the divorce packet and gave it to her. The bar watched in silence, then slowly applauded. Rebecca fled, Amber at her heels. Tom left miserable. Officer Perez warned me that if complaints came in, he'd investigate. I told him I planned to go home and sleep in my own bed. In the weeks that followed, consequences rippled out. Roy vanished from Stillwater. Tom moved to Portland. Dr. Ellis closed his practice and relocated. And Rebecca signed the divorce papers 3 days later and moved back to Boston. One night back at the Red Lantern, Mrs. Abbott approached me beaming. "People still can't stop talking about that festival," she said. I laughed. "Mrs. Abbott, you're dangerous." She winked. "Just keeping the community informed." Walking past the empty house that once held our life, past Roy's closed shop, past the places that used to be familiar, I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. Rebecca had guessed one thing right. I would never have walked away from her. I loved her. I trusted her. I believed in our marriage. But I'd learned the difference between love and respect. I wasn't weak or stupid or helpless. I'd simply learned a line I would no longer cross. She had thought she knew me, could predict and control me. She was wrong. And now the whole town knew exactly how wrong she'd been. Some say revenge is best served cold. I say it's best served publicly, thoroughly, and with a side of justice. In Stillwater, Maine, justice, or at least its version of it, had been served.